Hall of Famer. You can catch him calling games. Him, Spencer Tillman, they do an unbelievable job. That is our good friend, Tim Brando, Timmy B. Good morning, brother.
From John Boy to Crane and Company. How you've grown. How are you?
Man, I'm doing good. We're really excited. Blaine, let's get the Booster Club hot. I want to jump right in, Timmy B, because there's a lot. We know if we got football this week. College football this week. Let me just say that again slower. We have college football this week. I almost want to break down and cry. Speaking of weddings. But I want to start. Me and you were talking on social media a little bit the other day. There's a lot of talk about who the third best team in the SEC is. A lot of people, obviously, Bama and Georgia, they've earned the right to be the class of the SEC with all the talk in the preseason. You have some thoughts on Texas A&M this year, and I want to go ahead and start there. Let's House of Dragons was on last night. Let's breathe some fire.
Let's do it.
Well, I don't know who the third best team is. I mean, I really don't. I'm not following the league as closely, obviously, as I once did. I follow all of college football, but I don't follow the conferences as closely as I once did. From a distance, gosh, it could be Ole Miss, Kentucky, Arkansas. I mean, it could be one of those three. People want to throw in Tennessee. I understand there are more magazine subscriptions sold in Tennessee than in Mississippi, so that helps, possibly prop Tennessee up. But Texas A&M is without question overrated for what they have accomplished on the field coming in, for the schedule that they have going, and to not really know who your quarterback is. And I know Jimbo is a quarterback whisperer, a hell of a coach, but they've had their fair share of distractions too. And I just think A&M is sucking all the joy out of really who is third. Okay. I mean, Georgia supposedly has got to be right behind Alabama. I like them. I think Georgia is a team that could conceivably be in the college football playoff again this year. I do. But this thought that A&M, solely because we're living in a world now, Jake, of what your recruiting numbers are, just automatically props you up into the following season. And I just don't get that. Just because you got more 5 stars and 4 stars and your collectives are doing better than everybody else, that does not always translate to W's on the field. Now, look, last year, that team was mediocre except for really that one game against Alabama. They put it together. Good for them. Good for Jimbo. But I think the combination of that plus the recruiting numbers on A&M, it's almost as if these other teams that are in this conversation about third best don't really exist. It's got to be A&M just because. And I don't buy that.
Yeah, and again, it's you look obviously more at the transfer portal than you would about freshmen coming in. Yeah. A couple freshmen can come in and make an impact. We've seen that, especially with the way training's been developed nowadays, and younger guys are more ready. But transfer portal guys are more of a commodity. And Tim, I've got A&M starting 1 and 2 in the SEC. You start with the Arkansas to neutral site. You go to Mississippi State, which Mike Leach always beats somebody in that early window that he's not supposed to beat, going all the way back to Washington State. Then you got Bama on the road, who you not only beat last year, but called out before the season and beat. So it could be a weird start for A&M and Miami and before the conference season.
Well, you mentioned the Pirate and Mississippi State. Here's my sleeper in the league, okay? Because I do think Kiffin's team, maybe even to some extent Brian Kelly's team, are getting a little more love than Mississippi State. But if Will Rogers stays upright, that's your sleeper team. That's your team that could maybe come out of, wait a minute, are they that good? Mississippi State is a dangerous team as long as Rogers is the quarterback. He's not just a system guy. I talked to Archie Manning last week, and I always loved to get his read on what he saw at the academy. And, man, he loves Rodgers. He just thinks he's a difference maker. And look, there are a lot of great quarterbacks from a number standpoint that played for Mike, whether at Texas Tech or Wazoo. But this kid is special, and he's got a future beyond the SEC, no doubt about it.
Yeah, well, we said on this show a couple weeks ago, we think he's the second most NFL-ready quarterback in the league right now.
I would agree with that.
He's in my top 5 in the country as far as quarterbacks go. Can I go to the Big Ten?
You can go. Permission granted.
Let's go to the Big Ten here. Look, I will forever be biased in who I want to win when Michigan plays Ohio. You know that. But I won't be biased when I'm delivering the facts. And Ohio is going to be formidable this season. Ryan Day clearly has those boys ready to go. Jackson Smith-Ajigba is going to be one of the best wide receivers in the country, and they return maybe a Heisman favorite at the quarterback position in C.J. Stroud. Now, Michigan loses a lot on the defensive line and Dax Hill from the safety position. But also, on the flip side of that, Ohio has their top 2 wide receivers gone in the first 11 picks of the NFL draft, and they have a coordinator change as well, even though I think Jim Knowles is going to do great on the defensive side. Our boy Steve Day said they may have a physicality problem. I don't want to go that far, but what I want to ask you is, are we just handing the Big Ten Conference to Ohio too soon? Can Michigan or one of these other teams actually win this conference this season?
A little bit. I think you're onto something. I realize who you're rooting for because you failed to put state on the end of Ohio.
I didn't fail. I succeeded.
Is that a little bit of a Dan Mullen up north kind of thing that you got going on there?
We're winning.
Can't spell citrus without UT.
But Ohio State's offense is an absolute juggernaut. Now, Spencer and I are going to go up there for the Toledo Rockets, the 3rd week of the season. So the little Mac attack coming in. Last year, we were up there week 3, and it was after the Oregon loss. And Tulsa was a touchdown behind with under 10 minutes to play. Okay, they had real problems defensively at that time. And at the point that Tulsa was there, they were not very good. But they got good after that and made their run in the American Conference. So, but they look like that old line from Hank Stram in the Super Bowl years and years ago. Look at Kosalski and Winston out there. They look like a Chinese fire drill. That's what it looked like, watching them defensively. And I'll tell you this about Knowles, because I had Oklahoma State 4 times last year. We had the Cowboys 4 times. I told Mike Gundy we should have gotten a leather sweater, at least. We were there so many times. The Cowboys were really good, and I saw them against good teams and bad teams. That defense was legit, and he's going to solve Ohio State's issues in their back end. Their back 7 was just all over the place when we were there last year. That will change. So I think that's the basis for Ohio State love, and it's certainly one of the reasons why I picked them number 1 over Alabama. I think the offense is unstoppable. You mentioned all the great players they have. Travion Henderson is, in my opinion, if not the best back, he's right behind Bijan Robinson in terms of his athletic talent and his ability to run the football. You add all of that together, and I don't think that Stroud can win the Heisman because his playmakers might be better than him. I think there will be votes going to both Smith and Jigba, and maybe even Travion Henderson, because, he got a record-breaking number of yards for a freshman in a single game that day. And if they give him the ball a little bit more, I think he can amass some great numbers. But to your point, Ohio State's kind of gotten like Alabama North. It's easy to just place them there. But I think that the Knowles hire to go along with all of the talent offensively is the reason for it.
Well, I know they'll be great. While we're on the Big Ten, let's go Big Ten adjacent with Notre Dame, shall we? Because we did a segment last week.
Just join the Big Ten.
College football would be better if this Midwestern Catholic school would join the Big Ten. Reports are that they are going to remain independent. But when we did this segment, half of the Notre Dame fans reached out and said, we love that. That would be great. And then I had some Notre Dame fans saying, we've tried to join the Big Ten before. Actually, it was Michigan who blocked our entry into the Big Ten. Do you remember anything like that happening in the past? And do you think the Irish, can you break that down then? And do you think, what does the independent nature of the Irish look like over the next decade, say?
Well, the old relationships between the Big Ten, past athletic directors, even to some extent past Commissioner Jim Delaney, were a little bit distant from Notre Dame in the past. I don't think that's the case any longer. As a matter of fact, I know it's not the case. And the deal for Jack Swarbrick is this. They have so many endowments at Notre Dame, they can walk away from an extra $500 million, and it's not that big of a deal. It's not because of the TV deal with NBC. They weren't really making a lot of money in today's terms on that deal. They're trying to get up to around 60 or 70 million for their new television deal, which you would expect NBC to pony up now that they have the Big Ten in prime time. You certainly want to keep Notre Dame and let that be a lead-in to most of those games for 7 of those weeks. Here's my thought. I do believe that Notre Dame could cut a deal very similar with a wink and a nod with the Big Ten, whereby they could maintain their independence as long as they guarantee what they did guarantee John Swofford when he was the ACC commissioner. And that's playing 5 games on a rotating basis, including road games against Big Ten teams. You're only adding maybe 2 or 3. You're already playing Michigan State. You're already playing Michigan. You really don't have to. Ohio State, they're playing to open the season this year. So you really don't have to add that many to make that happen. That way, Notre Dame would secure the fact that all of their games would be on NBC. Conceivably, they could play at night on NBC on the road as part of the Big Ten package, and they could have their day games in that 3:30 window, or even if they wanted to play at noon, they could play then as well. So I think it's a cake and eat it too type of situation for Swarbrick. At some point, I do believe they will join a conference. It may not be now, but I think it definitely could happen. And the relationship between Notre Dame and the Big Ten is a lot better now than it was even 5 years ago.
Great.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and get the Booster Club involved.
Let's do it.
I love when you get a boost. How you doing today, Tim? We're going to go Travis. We're going to go Travis Elrod, all right? He says, Tim, which is more important in college football, recruiting talent or improving talent?
Improving talent. I mean, I can go over and over how many times. Take a look at Mike Gundy's career. Now, yeah, he's lost to Oklahoma more than he's won. A hell of a lot more losses than he's won. But look at what he has done in terms of developing not just talent, but assistant coaches. Go down the litany of offensive coordinators who spent time, all the way back to Dana Holgorsen. I can go on and on about guys that were with him there. Now Jim Knowles is coming out of that defense. That was one of the best defenses I've ever seen that he had a year ago. And were it not for a really bungled goal line offense at the end, they would have beaten Baylor and been in the college football playoff, and Cincinnati would have been out last year. He knows he's not going to get the same people Oklahoma gets, but he always develops that talent. He's had consistency and stability at the top, albeit with coaches leaving about every third or fourth year. He loses a lot of his staff. I definitely believe recruiting is huge, yes. And the greatest programs are always going to get them as long as we have this 4-team college football playoff. The recruiting advantages to Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, and Clemson are there because only 4 teams get in. And yet last year, if you go back and look at the regular season, fellas, you'll see we had a hell of a lot of upsets. We had a lot. The parity story is in college football, but we don't see it in the postseason. Therefore, we disregard it entirely. And that's a shame. But yes, I think developing talent is still far more important. Well, not far, but more important than recruiting.
If you can do both, you'll murder people. See Nick Saban.
And that's why Saban. And that's why Saban's been where he's been for such a long time.
That's exactly right.
All right, let's go out to the Pac-12. Oregon Ducks. Troy Jacob wants to know, what's your expectations for Oregon this year, and how much will Dan Lanning improve Oregon's defense?
That's a very interesting question because, and we'll get an early read on it, right? I mean, we're going to get an early read on that. Mm-hmm. The talent level at Oregon is very good. I mean, Cristobal did a hell of a job recruiting before he left. The fit for him is going to be interesting, especially now with the changing face of the Pac-12, what that job is and what that job is going to be. But, I think that defensively, if they can shore that up, and certainly, he's outstanding at it, the personnel on the offensive side of the ball is always going to be good. With USC gone and UCLA gone in the future, I think Oregon can be the banner carrier for the league if they continue. They are, without question, the team that's left in the Pac-12 that draws the most eyeballs. They get good ratings whenever they're on. They and Washington are the 2 higher-rated teams, although what I'm hearing about Big Ten expansion right now is it's more of a San Francisco thing with Cal at Stanford. I frankly believe Oregon and Washington are the other 2 eyeball getters from a television rating standpoint. Mm-hmm. But that's a hell of a good question. I'm not sure. I think if he is as good first-year head coach as he has been coordinator, then I think there's stability as one of the top-tier teams in the Pac-12 is going to remain, and he may even improve on that. But he can reap the benefit of some of Mario's recruiting as a first-year head coach.
Yeah, I agree. I actually have a question, Tim. Let's talk about the ACC and Clemson, because you kind of mentioned a lot of people were giving Ohio State in the Big Ten. Well, everyone's giving ACC Clemson the championship in the ACC. If you're Clemson, what team should you be worried about the most?
North Carolina State, they're coming to you and they're going to beat you.
Yes.
Timmy B.
They're coming to you and they are going to beat you come October. I love Doran's team. Hell, most people couldn't name a player on his squad. He's got a transfer quarterback that I think can make a real difference. And he's also got, a team leader that is also a quarterback. His quarterback room is fine. But what I love about them is their back end, their back seven, and particularly their corners. They have probably the best defensive backfield of any team in the Atlantic Coast Conference. And they were really on their way to becoming pretty doggone good last year. I think they're going to take another step. I think he's a modern day. I'm aging myself a little bit. Dick Sheridan was a hell of a coach. And when he was at North Carolina State, a lot of guys were coming after him, but he was a little bit like Doran. I think he didn't like the bright lights. He was understated. I think the same is true with Doran. And he's been there 10 years now, and he has every year gotten that program better and better. And I think North Carolina State is a big-time sleeper nationally, and I think they're going to win the ACC. The league is not that good, and that's one of the reasons why Clemson's been able to be so dominant for such a long period of time.
Yeah, two most underrated coaches in college football. In my opinion, Kyle Whittingham, Dave Doran. Those are the two.
Yeah, Doran's outstanding. Yeah. He really is.
Timmy B, speaking of outstanding, it's always great when you come on, my friend. Thank you so much for making the time, getting up with us. Hey, what's your first game? What's the first game you're calling this year? Let everybody know.
We got a twofer. I think the bosses at Fox thought, well, Brando's been off for 5 months. He's been playing golf. We'll just give him 2 games the opening week. So Spencer and I opened with a conference game, a game that, when you think about it, Indiana is a program that is coming off a bad year after a 6-win COVID season. They can't afford to lose to Illinois, and Brett Bielema has got a team that I think has a chance to go to a bowl this year. So Illinois at Indiana on Friday, September the 2nd. That'll be on FS1. Then we're going to hop in a Hummer, right? Have a few libations while the driver drives.
Yep.
Up north to Camp Randall, and we've got Illinois State, the Redbirds at Wisconsin. So on Wisconsin on Saturday night, the 3rd. And then the following week, Texas Tech hosts Houston. That's a great Big 12 2023 preview. And I love Houston, by the way. They're my fly in the ointment. I think Holgerson will win every game this year. And but they don't play a good enough road schedule against a power team to do what Cincinnati did. And then week 3, we go up to Columbus again. We've got Toledo at Ohio State in week 3.
Nice. Well, we're really excited, Timmy B. Anytime you get on the call, number 1, that means football's back. Number 2, we get to watch you and Spencer do your thing. And Fresno State's my fly in the ointment. They do have a good enough schedule and an away game at USC. A lot of Cincinnati vibes there.
Hey,
you can kind of feel
that game, Fresno State at USC is on Fox. We've got a quadruple hitter that week. And right after Ohio State, Toledo will have Fresno State at USC,
Nice.
A little Pac-12 after dark. That'll be fun.
Can't
I'm with
wait.
you on that pick. I like
sure.
that pick.
Jake Hayner's a witch. Timmy B, I appreciate it, my friend. Thank you so much. We'll talk soon.
Cheers.
If you like that content, go ahead and subscribe because we're going to be balling every day on Crane & Company. Hit that like button while you're at it and go ahead and smash it like Derrick Henry on an ISO run.